All right, welcome back, everybody. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. Today, we're going to be reviewing The Claw of the Conciliator by Gene Wolfe, book number 2 in his Book of the New Sun. Perhaps you saw my review of Shadow of the Torturer a couple weeks ago. Well, here's the thing. I hadn't read these books in probably 20 years, so I didn't remember a whole lot about them. And then I reread Shadow of the Torturer a couple weeks ago. I loved it so much that once I was done rereading it, I went back to page 1 and I started rereading the same book right then. It was so, eye-openingly awesome that I had to reread it because I knew that I hadn't grasped everything that's in it. These books are full of they're like a fever dream. They're like the name of the wind on acid. I mean, it's just that's the only way I can describe these books. And so I was like, I want to hurry and jump into book number 2, but by God, I got to read book number 1 again and again just to grasp what's going on here. So book number 2 makes sense. That's the setup for the review. Let's talk about the covers. You know, we always review the book covers because I love illustration and I love graphic design. So let's talk about this one. Again, just like book 1, book 3, and book 4, this cover illustration was done by the illustrator Don Mates. Sorry about the glare. Oh, there's a good one. A nice painting of our torturer, his cloak. We've got the Claw of the Conciliator right there, which is a stone that glows in the dark, kind of a thing, a magical stone. Well, we don't see his Terminus Est. Well, maybe that's his sword. That's his sword. But what we do get is these creatures down here, which we meet in the book, and they're badass dudes. So what is this book about? I can't. It's almost like, here's the thing. I try not to do spoilers on my reviews, and there won't be spoilers in this review. However, I could describe every single page of this book, and I don't think I would be spoiling anything because, like I said, this is like reading somebody's acid trip, where you just kind of got to piece things together. There are scenes in these books where we're in a medieval land, like a very, very dark, grim medieval land. It's a post-apocalyptic world. You know, much like Terry Brooks' Shannara Chronicles, that the world something's happened to our Earth. In fact, they call it Earth, but they spell it U-R-T-H in here. Something's happened to the Earth tens of thousands of years ago. Technology's pretty much disappeared. There's only hints and remnants of our past. And everything's very medieval, right? And we've got swords and battle axes and things like this, and people are wearing cloaks. And it's very, very medieval. But then once in a while, someone's picking up a pistol or using a pistol. And then once in a while, and this is where it gets trippy, your characters are just doing what they're doing, and then all of a sudden, they all see up in the sky above their city what appears to be like a spaceship, like a starship. I mean, it's described. They all look up and they're kind of like, hey, what is that? It's almost like if during the Fellowship of the Ring, you know, Gandalf and everybody are marching towards the Mines of Moria, and then they're just like, and Pippin goes, hey, what's that big, huge metal thing up in the sky with all the twinkling lights hovering over, you know, Minas Tirith? And everybody looks and they're like, oh my gosh, what the hell is that? And then it shoots, and then there's a crack of thunder and it shoots off into space. And they're just like, oh, that was bizarre. And then they keep going. They're like, it's kind of like, you know, when people here on our own universe, here in America, you know, we got people that claim to be abducted by, you know, aliens, and, you know, they're whisked up into the spaceships and their bungholes, they're probed, or whatever happens. It's never happened to me, I swear to God. But I'm just saying these are what most reports are, and then they come back and they say, hey, I got abducted by an alien, and then they just keep going about their daily lives, right? It's kind of like what happens, but without the bunghole. I mean, there's no experiments on anybody's butt in these books. But however, you get the point, right? It's weird stuff just in this post-apocalyptical world that we're living in. Everything's medieval, but once in a while, like a fax machine will go off, and they'll be like, "Hey, somebody's faxing me some shit," there's no explanation for it, or someone will be like, "Oh, let me see, I got a pistol. Oh, I need to go into battle. I got this pistol here I can choose from and a sword. Well, I'll take the sword." And the other people are like, the pistol's probably a little more effective. But they're like, no, let's go with the swords. And then, no, there's no explanation for any of that. At least I think, like I said, this is like someone's taken acid and then written down their fever dream. And I'm like, at least I think that's what's going on. I could be way off. Everybody's interpretation of this could be different. I mean, I don't know if from book to book, if the words are even the same. Because if you look at everybody's analysis of these books, everybody has a different take on what happened. Like, I think there are spaceships in this book, and other people are like, you're out of your fucking mind. I never saw no spaceships in there. Other people think that there's other things, and I'm like, I didn't see that. Beyond all that weirdness, this is a freaking good story. This is about Severian, the torturer, who gets kicked out of the Torturers Guild for having mercy on a girl that he's supposed to torture to death that he kind of fell in love with, and he has mercy on her, and so they kick him out of the Torturers Guild. So now he's got his sword Terminus Est and his dark cloak, and he goes wandering off into like cane and kung fu, just wandering the earth to do whatever it is that ex-torturers do. Well, what happens is this book starts out with an amazing, gruesome, bloody, beautifully written torture scene. I loved every word of it. And it's just, I'm like, okay, now we're into this story is dripping with some cool shit right from the beginning. And then our guy, he goes into some underground caverns where he meets these glowing apes. Their white fur glows in the dark, and they're apes, and they're vampire apes, and they wield maces, like spiked maces. If that doesn't get you interested in reading this book, I don't know what will. I mean, right here on the cover, you can see all of the glowing apes with their maces, glowing vampire apes that wield maces. And he's going to get killed, but then he pulls out the Claw of the Conciliator, this stone, this magic stone. Like I said, there's a lot of weird stuff. Magic stones, torturers, vampire apes, starships just showing, time travel people. I mean, like DeLoreans. Michael J. Fox shows up at one point in a DeLorean. I swear to God it was in here. That's what I'm talking about. Have you ever, had Bill Cosby spilled out of a spaceship and started selling pudding pops in the middle of this? I would not have been surprised. That joke would only make sense to people who grew up in the 80s when Bill Cosby used to sell pudding pops on the TV. Man, I'm old. Anyway, when I reviewed The Shadow of the Torturer, I talked about how it was light on plot and just sort of beautifully written but bizarre. Now that we're getting more into book 2, I can see a plot starting to form and things are starting to coalesce into like a story with a story arc and things like that. And it's really starting to get interesting. And I actually kind of look forward to those unexplainable events that happen in this book where the characters are just going about their business and they're like, was that a police car that just drove by? I don't know. I don't even know what a police car is, but I think that might have been a police car. Oh, well, let's get our battle axes and go storm the castle. I'm not making this shit up, folks. I'm not making this shit up. It's just wackadoo. But it's wackadoo that's taking itself way seriously. It's like it's not tongue-in-cheek. It's like It's like literally, like, I can't explain this. I don't think anybody can explain these books. And the reason we're so drawn to them, the reason they're so popular and people love them and talk about them as being like the literary injection into fantasy is just because of these things that you read and you're like, I don't understand it. I must be reading Tolstoy, Dostoevsky. I must be reading something. Ulysses. I can't understand. I mean, that's just the only thing I get. The only thing I drink in the words. That's all I can say. I drink in the words, and I love the name of his sword, Terminus Est. That's the best, most dope name for a sword in all of fantasy. Terminus Est. Anyway, our torturer, our torturer who's been kicked out of the League of Torturers, yes, he's on an adventure. He's like Cain wandering the earth. He's like Conan the Barbarian, just going from place to place and kicking ass. And a lot of weird shit, too. Like I said, this is like, and it's told from his perspective. It's told with his voice. Like much, that's why I said at the beginning, it's like Name of the Wind on acid. It really is. It's as beautifully written as Name of the Wind, if not more. I mean, you really gotta sink your teeth into it, where Name of the Wind is more of a light read. This is more of a heavy read. But the similarities, I'm telling you, there are a lot of similarities. If you love The Name of the Wind, this is a much more complex and R-rated version of that. With a more interesting protagonist, I think, than Kvothe. I like Severian more than I like Kvothe, and I like Kvothe quite a bit. So anyway, let's give book number 2. I loved book number 1, man, and book number 2 just dialed this up. Now I'm going to have to reread this one too before. But anyway, I'm on a Gene Wolfe. Like, I have a crush on this guy's writing. You know, if I could marry someone's writing, it would be this guy's writing. We'll give it a 10 out of 10.